Trust is a dangerous thing. We trust that the taxi driver is taking us to our destination. We trust that the lock on the hotel door actually works. We trust that the person smiling at us from across the street is just being friendly. But predators rely on that trust. They use it to get close. They use it to get inside. Tonight I have 4 true scary stories that will make you second-guess who you trust. From vacation rentals that weren't empty to night shifts that turned into nightmares. These stories are proof that sometimes paranoia is the only thing that keeps you alive. Get comfortable, check your blind spots, and let's begin. This first story was sent in by a user named Chloe, and it ruined the idea of vacation rentals for me forever. Last winter, my boyfriend and I decided to book a weekend getaway in the mountains. We found this incredible cabin on a popular rental app. It had 5 stars, glowing reviews, and it was listed as a secluded paradise. The host, a man named Thomas, was a super host. It seemed perfect. We arrived late on a Friday night. The cabin was beautiful, nestled deep in the woods, miles from the nearest town. Thomas had left a key in the lockbox. Inside, it was cozy. Fireplace, big leather couches, and a wall of windows facing the forest. The first night was great. We drank wine, played board games, and went to bed. But the next morning, things got weird. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I noticed something on the fridge. It was a chore list, normal for these rentals. But one rule stood out. Rule number 4, do not open the basement door. It is used for storage and is alarmed. I shrugged it off. Owners have their private spaces. That afternoon, it started to snow heavily. My boyfriend Mark went out to the car to get our bags of groceries. I was sitting on the couch reading. Suddenly, I heard a thud. It came from beneath me, from the basement. I froze. I thought maybe it was the heater kicking on. But then I heard it again. Thump. Thump. It sounded like footsteps, heavy ones. When Mark came back in, I told him. He laughed and said it was probably just the pipes or a raccoon. Thomas said it's just storage down there, he reasoned. That night, Mark fell asleep early on the couch. I was wide awake, staring at the basement door in the hallway. It was a heavy wooden door with a deadbolt on our side. Around 1 a.m., I got up to get a glass of water. I walked past the basement door. The deadbolt was unlocked. I stopped dead in my tracks. I absolutely knew, that the lock was engaged earlier. I had checked it myself. I slowly reached out and turned the lock back to the horizontal position. Click. As soon as the lock clicked, the doorknob jiggled. Someone was on the other side, holding the knob. "Thomas?" I whispered, my voice trembling. No answer, just the knob turning aggressively back and forth, rattling against the lock. I ran to the couch and shook Mark awake. "We have to go. Now." "What?" he groggily asked. "There is someone in the basement. They just tried to open the door." Mark looked at me like I was crazy, but the look on my face must have convinced him. We grabbed our keys and coats, leaving our luggage behind. We ran out into the snow and jumped into the car. As Mark reversed down the driveway, I looked back at the cabin. The basement door wasn't visible, but the living room window was. Standing in the window, watching us leave, was a man. He wasn't the owner from the profile picture. He was older, gaunt, and he was wearing my boyfriend's jacket that we had left on the hook by the door. We called the police from the nearest gas station. When they investigated, they found a sleeping bag, a bucket, and a collection of Polaroid photos in the basement. The photos were of previous guests sleeping in the upstairs bedroom, taken from the closet. The superhost Thomas didn't exist. The account was fake. The man in the basement had been living there for months, renting the place out just to watch people sleep. This next story comes from a guy who works the graveyard shift at a gas station. If you've ever worked nights, You know the weirdos come out after 2 a.m. I've been working at this gas station off the interstate for about 3 years. It's usually quiet. Truckers come in for coffee, teenagers come in for snacks. That's about it. But last month, I had an encounter that made me quit. It was 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday. The store was empty. I was restocking the cigarettes behind the counter when the door chimed. A woman walked in. She was wearing a hospital gown and no shoes. Her feet were muddy and bleeding. It was freezing outside, maybe 30 degrees. I immediately grabbed the phone. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call an ambulance?" She didn't answer. She walked straight to the back of the store, toward the beer coolers. She stood there, staring at the glass, swaying back and forth. I walked out from behind the counter, keeping my distance. "Ma'am, I'm calling for help." She slowly turned her head. Her eyes were completely dilated, black saucers. She smiled, and her teeth were stained red. "He's coming," she whispered. Who? Who is coming?" I asked, my hand hovering over the panic button on my belt. "The collector," she giggled. Then the door chimed again. A man walked in. He was huge, at least 6'5". He was wearing a pristine black suit, a fedora, and sunglasses. At 3 a.m. in a gas station. He didn't look at me. He walked calmly toward the woman. The woman started screaming. It wasn't a normal scream. It was a primal shriek of pure terror. She dropped to the floor and curled into a ball. "Excuse me, sir," I shouted. "Step away from her." The man stopped. He turned to me. He lowered his sunglasses just an inch. Where his eyes should have been, there was nothing. Just smooth skin. No sockets, no eyelids. Just skin. I froze. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. He turned back to the woman, grabbed her by the arm with one hand, and lifted her off the ground like she weighed nothing. She was kicking and screaming, but he didn't flinch. He dragged her toward the door. I wanted to help. I wanted to move, but I was paralyzed with fear. They walked out the door. I watched them through the glass. They didn't get into a car. They walked into the cornfield behind the station. I called the police immediately. They searched the field with dogs and helicopters. They found the woman's hospital gown torn to shreds in the middle of the field. But they never found her. And they never found the man in the suit. The police told me the woman had escaped from a psychiatric facility 10 miles away. They said she had a history of hallucinations. But I know what I saw. I saw that man's face. And I know that whatever took her wasn't human. The third story is a cautionary tale about buying things online. We all love a good deal, but sometimes the price is higher than just money. I'm a photographer, and camera gear is expensive. I was looking for a specific vintage lens, a Leica, which usually goes for around $2,000. I found one on Facebook Marketplace for $500. The seller, a guy named Greg, said he was selling his grandfather's old stuff and didn't know what it was worth. Jackpot, right? We agreed to meet at a public park at 5 p.m. It was still daylight, lots of people around. I felt safe. I arrived at the park and texted him. "I'm here, silver Toyota." He replied, "I'm in the gray van near the restrooms. My leg is in a cast. Can you come to me?" I hesitated, but I looked across the parking lot. I saw the gray van. It was parked near the restrooms, but there were kids playing on the swings nearby. It seemed fine. I walked over. The van's windows were tinted dark. I knocked on the passenger window. The window rolled down about 2 inches. A pair of eyes appeared in the gap. "You the camera guy?" a voice rasped. "Yeah," I said. "Can I see the lens?" "It's in the back," he said. "The side door is unlocked. Just slide it open and grab it. I can't move my leg to reach it." I walked around to the sliding door. I put my hand on the handle. Something in my gut screamed, "Stop." It was a physical reaction. My stomach dropped. The hair on my arm stood up. I looked down at the ground. Under the van, I could see the reflection of the driver in a puddle. He wasn't sitting in the driver's seat with a cast. He was twisted around, leaning toward the sliding door, and he was holding something big and black in his hand. A stun gun? A pistol? I let go of the handle and stepped back. Actually, I forgot the cash in my car, I lied. Let me go grab it. Just get in and look at it, he shouted. The desperation in his voice was terrifying. No thanks, I said, backing away. Suddenly, the sliding door flew open. 2 men, not one, but 2, lunged out. They were wearing ski masks. I sprinted. I ran faster than I have ever run in my life, screaming, "Help!" at the top of my lungs. The dads at the playground turned around, and the men froze. Realizing they had witnesses, they jumped back in the van and peeled out of the parking lot, nearly hitting a stroller. I gave the license plate to the cops. The van was stolen. Inside, they found zip ties, duct tape, and a tarp. There was no camera lens. If I had opened that door and leaned in, I would have been pulled into the darkness, and no one at that playground would have noticed until it was too late. Our final story takes place in the wilderness. It was sent in by a forest ranger named Arthur. I work in a fire lookout tower in the Pacific Northwest. My job is to sit in a glass box 100 feet in the air and watch for smoke. I spend 2 weeks up there at a time, completely alone. The tower is miles from the nearest road. To get to me, you have to hike 4 hours uphill. It was my 3rd night of the shift. The wind was howling, rattling the windows of the tower. I was making soup on the propane stove when I heard a sound over the wind. Clang, clang, clang. It was the sound of boots on the metal stairs leading up to the tower. I wasn't expecting a relief crew. I wasn't expecting hikers. It was 11 p.m. in a storm. I grabbed my radio to call base, but the storm had knocked out the signal. Static. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it down through the trap door in the floor, which was the only way in. Through the metal grate of the stairs, I saw a figure. A man, dressed in dark clothing, was climbing steadily. He wasn't using a flashlight. He was climbing in pitch darkness. "Hello," I shouted through the floor. "This is a restricted area. You need to turn around." He didn't stop. Clang, clang, clang. He was fast. He was already halfway up. I checked the lock on the trap door. It was a simple latch. It wouldn't hold against a strong kick. I dragged my heavy desk over the trap door and stood on top of it, holding my flare gun. The footsteps reached the top platform. Silence. He was standing right under me, separated only by a layer of wood and steel. Then, a soft scratching started on the wood. He was caressing the bottom of the trap door. "Arthur," a voice whispered. My blood turned to ice. He knew my name. "Arthur, let me in. I have a message for you." "Go away," I yelled, aiming the flare gun at the door. "Open up, Arthur. Don't be rude." Then he started slamming against the trap door. The desk I was standing on shook violently. Bam, bam, bam. I fired the flare gun through the glass window, hoping someone in the valley would see the red light. The banging continued for an hour. He was screaming my name, laughing, then crying, then screaming again. It sounded like he was having a conversation with himself. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I didn't move from that spot until the sun came up. When the morning crew arrived, they had seen the flare. They found the metal stairs covered in mud and blood. The man had climbed up with his bare hands, tearing his fingernails on the grating. They tracked his footprints back to the trail, but they vanished into the dense forest. Later, I found out that a maximum security prisoner had escaped from a transport van in the valley 3 days prior. He had been wandering the woods. He didn't know me. He had just read my name tag on the roster posted at the trailhead miles away. He climbed 4 hours in a storm just to see if he could get to me. There are monsters in this world. Some hide in basements, some hide in vans, and some climb towers in the middle of the night. We like to think we are the top of the food chain. But when you are alone in the dark, and you hear that lock click, you realize very quickly that you are just prey. Listen to your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't worry about being polite. Worry about staying alive. Which of these stories scared you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you have a story of your own, send it to me. I read everything. Until next time, keep your doors locked.